In 1916, two European diplomats drew lines on a map, dividing the Middle East into zones of influence. Mark Sykes represented Britain, François Georges-Picot represented France. Both were considered experts on the region. Sykes had traveled extensively through Ottoman territories and written books about the area. Picot had served as French consul general in Beirut. Yet despite their expertise, they drew borders based on imperial interests rather than the demographic realities of the people who lived there. Their secret agreement created the foundations for modern Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. Today, over 100 years later, these borders remain the epicenter of global instability. The Syrian civil war, which began in 2011, has killed over 500,000 people. The rise of ISIS in 2014, the statelessness of 30 to 40 million Kurds, all trace back to decisions made in that single document from 1916. To understand why the Middle East has no peace, we must go back to World War I, when the Ottoman Empire controlled the entire region, and when Britain and France made promises they never intended to keep. In this video, we will explore the secret 1916 Sykes-Picot Agreement and how it betrayed promises made to Arabs, how artificial borders created Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon with built-in conflicts, why 30 to 40 million Kurds remain stateless after being promised a country, the British and French strategies that still fuel sectarian wars today, and why these century-old lines continue to shape modern conflicts. If you want to understand the Middle East beyond the headlines, stay with me for the next 22 minutes.
The Middle East today is a region of perpetual crisis. Syria has been engulfed in civil war since 2011. More than 500,000 people have died. 13 million have been displaced as refugees or internally. The infrastructure of entire cities, Aleppo, Homs, has been reduced to rubble. Iraq remains unstable 2 decades after the United States invasion in 2003. The country fractured along sectarian lines, Sunni versus Shia, Arab versus Kurd. In 2014, ISIS captured 1/3 of Iraqi territory, declaring a caliphate that symbolically bulldozed the border between Iraq and Syria, claiming to end Sykes-Picot. Lebanon's economy has collapsed. In 2020, a massive explosion at Beirut port killed 200 people and devastated the capital. The blast exposed decades of corruption and state failure. 60,000 Lebanese citizens signed a petition asking to return to French colonial rule, a desperate measure revealing how deeply the state has failed its people. And then there are the Kurds. 30 to 40 million people spread across Turkey, Iraq, Iran, and Syria. They are the largest ethnic group in the world without a country. In each state, they face suppression, discrimination, and in Iraq's case, genocide. Saddam Hussein's Anfal campaign in 1988 killed between 50,000 and 180,000 Kurds. Many believe these conflicts are primarily about religion. Sunni versus Shia, Muslim versus Christian, sectarian hatred passed down through generations. But the roots lie deeper. They trace back to a secret agreement signed in May 1916 when two European powers divided the Ottoman Empire on a map, prioritizing imperial interests over the wishes of the people who lived there. This matters globally. The Middle East produces 28 million barrels of oil per day, roughly 30% of global supply. Instability here means volatile energy prices worldwide. The conflicts have generated the worst refugee crisis since World War II, with millions fleeing to Europe, creating political tensions across the continent. Terrorism born from regional chaos, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, has struck cities from Paris to New York. To understand how we arrived at this point, we must go back to World War I, when the Ottoman Empire, the power that had governed this region for 4 centuries, chose the losing side. And when Britain and France, anticipating Ottoman defeat, began secretly planning how to divide the spoils.
For 400 years, the Ottoman Empire governed the Arab provinces through a fundamentally different system than the European nation-states that would replace it. The empire used the millet system, granting religious communities, Greek Orthodox, Armenian, Jewish, Syriac Christians, significant autonomy under their own leaders. Your primary identity was your religious community, not your geography. A Greek merchant in Aleppo, an Armenian craftsman in Jerusalem, and a Jewish trader in Baghdad all lived under the same empire but maintained distinct identities. The vilayet system divided the region into administrative provinces for tax collection, not ethnic homelands. The vilayet of Damascus encompassed modern Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. The vilayet of Mosul covered Kurdish areas. These were administrative conveniences, not national borders. A merchant could travel from the Mediterranean coast to the Persian Gulf without crossing hard frontiers or presenting a passport. The region functioned as an integrated economic zone. When World War I began in 1914, the Ottoman Empire allied with Germany. Britain and France saw an opportunity. If the Ottomans lost, their Arab territories could be divided. Between 1915 and 1917, 3 contradictory agreements were made. This triple deception became the foundation of Arab distrust toward the West. First, the McMahon-Hussein correspondence between July 1915 and March 1916. Sir Henry McMahon, British High Commissioner in Egypt, promised Sharif Hussein of Mecca an independent Arab kingdom in exchange for revolting against the Ottomans. The Arabs understood this promise to include all Arab lands from Aleppo to Aden, encompassing the Arabian Peninsula and Fertile Crescent. Based on these promises, the Arab revolt launched in June 1916, led by Faisal and advised by T.E. Lawrence. Arabs believed they were fighting for independence. But while McMahon negotiated with Mecca, Britain simultaneously negotiated with France to divide the same territories. In May 1916, Mark Sykes and François-Georges Picot concluded a secret agreement to partition the Ottoman Arab provinces. The agreement proposed a color-coded partition. The red zone, under direct British control, included Basra and Baghdad, securing oil fields and the route to India. The blue zone, under direct French control, covered the Syrian coast and Lebanon to protect Maronite Christians. Zone A, under French influence, included interior Syria, Damascus, Aleppo, and the vilayet of Mosul. Zone B, under British influence, covered southern Syria and northern Iraq. A brown zone proposed international administration for Palestine. According to the agreement text preserved in the Yale Avalon Project, the logic was purely imperial. Britain sought control of oil and the India route. France claimed a civilizing mission in the Levant. Neither power consulted the people who lived there.
The third contradiction came in November 1917, when British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour issued a declaration supporting a Jewish homeland in Palestine. This conflicted with McMahon-Hussein, where Arabs believed Palestine was theirs, and with Sykes-Picot, which designated Palestine as international. The declaration also served British strategic interests, creating a potential buffer state to protect the Suez Canal. In November 1917, the Bolsheviks seized power in Russia and published secret treaties to embarrass the Allies. When Sykes-Picot was revealed, Arabs realized that while they fought and died for promised independence, Britain and France had already secretly agreed to divide their lands. According to historical analysis published by Al Jazeera, this revelation was viewed as foundational treachery. The sense of betrayal persists in Arab political discourse today. The actual borders drawn after the war differed significantly from the 1916 map. The most significant change was the Mosul transfer. Originally allocated to France, the Mosul Villiers was transferred to British control in December 1918. The British Admiralty had transitioned the Royal Navy from coal to oil. Intelligence identified Mosul as sitting atop vast petroleum reserves. Prime Minister Lloyd George demanded Mosul from French Prime Minister Clemenceau, who agreed in exchange for British support in Europe and a 25% share in the Iraq Petroleum Company. According to research in the Journal of Modern History, this decision forced the Kurdish population of Mosul into an Arab-majority state called Iraq, creating a permanent fault line. Had Mosul remained with France or gained autonomy, Kurdish nationalism and Iraqi stability would have developed differently. In April 1920, the San Remo Conference formalized the division into League of Nations mandates. Britain received mandates for Iraq and Palestine. France received mandates for Syria and Lebanon. In March 1921, Winston Churchill convened the Cairo Conference. In 10 days, Churchill and T.E. Lawrence made decisions determining the fate of millions. They created Iraq by amalgamating 3 distinct Ottoman provinces: Mosul in the north with Kurds, Baghdad in the center with Sunni Arabs, Basra in the south with Shia Arabs. 3 groups with different languages and religions were forced into one state. To provide Arab legitimacy, Churchill installed Faisal, just expelled from Syria by France, as king of Iraq. Faisal had never visited Iraq. His brother Abdullah received the newly created Emirate of Transjordan to prevent him from attacking the French. According to British National Archives documents, these decisions were made by a handful of officials in less than 2 weeks.
Britain and France adopted opposite governance strategies. Both entrenched instability through different mechanisms. France used divide and rule, viewing Sunni Arab nationalism as the primary threat. In September 1920, France created Greater Lebanon by expanding Mount Lebanon, historically Maronite, Christian and Druze, to include coastal cities Tripoli, Beirut, Sidon, Tyre, and the Bekaa Valley. This absorbed large Sunni and Shia Muslim populations into a Christian-dominated state. In 1920, Christians were perhaps 51%, but demographic trends were clear. Muslim birth rates were higher, Christian emigration was constant. Within decades, Christians would become a minority. Yet the political system, confessionalism, guaranteed Maronite dominance. The president would always be Maronite, the prime minister Sunni, the speaker Shia. Power was frozen based on a 1932 census never repeated. According to analysis by History Today, this created permanent identity crisis. Many Muslims identified as Syrians and rejected Lebanese legitimacy. This exploded in the 1958 crisis and the 1975-90 civil war, killing over 150,000. The 2020 Beirut explosion and the petition by 60,000 Lebanese to return to French rule illustrate enduring trauma. In Syria, France initially divided its mandate into mini-states to fragment Sunni power. The state of Damascus, Aleppo, the Alawite state, the Druze state. Though eventually unified, France's most consequential decision was recruiting minorities, specifically Alawites and Druze, into the security forces. According to research on French mandate policies, this created a military where minorities held the guns while Sunnis were excluded. This laid the foundation for the Ba'athist coup and Hafez al-Assad's seizure of power in 1970. The Assad dynasty's minority rule over a Sunni majority is a direct legacy of French policy. When Syrians revolted in 2011, they were fighting a system of minority military dominance established 90 years earlier. Britain's strategy in Iraq was amalgamation, forcibly combining 3 provinces into one kingdom. This triggered the 1920 revolt. Britain responded with aerial bombardment and installed Faisal as king. Despite Shia Arabs constituting 55 to 60% of the population, Britain relied exclusively on Sunni Arab elites to administer the state. This entrenched sectarian minority rule that persisted through the monarchy, Ba'athist coups, and Saddam Hussein's dictatorship. Only the United States invasion in 2003 inverted this structure, empowering the Shia majority for the first time. The sectarian civil war that followed was the violent unwinding of a power structure imposed by Britain in 1921.
From the Arab perspective, Sykes-Picot represents foundational betrayal. McMahon promised independence. Arabs revolted, sacrificing thousands based on that promise. Then, the Bolsheviks revealed Britain and France had already divided Arab lands while Arabs still fought. The borders were artificial, dividing the Arab nation and separating families, tribes, and economic regions. Western powers installed puppet regimes to maintain control. The King Crane Commission in 1919 provided evidence of this betrayal. President Wilson dispatched diplomats to survey local wishes. The commission received over 1,800 petitions. 72% opposed a Jewish state in Palestine. The vast majority favored a united Syrian state under Faisal. They rejected French rule. According to the report, suppressed until 1922, dismissing these wishes signaled to Arabs that Western self-determination was fraudulent when applied to the Middle East. This explains persistent anti-imperialist rhetoric. Nasser, Assad, Saddam all used anti-Western ideology to legitimize rule. The irony is, these regimes often became as oppressive as colonial powers. But their rhetoric resonated because the grievance was real. From the British and French perspective, archived in national records, the rationale differed. The Ottoman Empire had collapsed. Arab society was tribal and fragmented with no unified structure. A single Arab kingdom from Aleppo to Aden was unrealistic. Different tribes and communities were already fighting. Without external authority, chaos would follow. The mandate system was designed as transition, providing modern administration and infrastructure, gradually preparing territories for independence. France's protection of Christians, particularly Maronites, was framed as humanitarian obligation. Christians were vulnerable minorities. Without French protection, they risked persecution. Creating Lebanon as a Christian refuge was a moral imperative. Some modern Western historians, such as Louise Fawcett at Chatham House, argue the borders were not entirely arbitrary. Some followed geographic features or administrative boundaries. Moreover, the alternative might have collapsed into civil war given ethnic and religious diversity. The mandates provided stability, however imperfect. Modern conflicts are not solely caused by bad borders. Authoritarian regimes suppressing populations, sectarian ideologies, politicizing religion, Cold War interventions, oil's strategic importance, and Islamist extremism all contribute. Blaming everything on Sykes-Picot oversimplifies complex reality.
From the academic historian perspective, represented by Cambridge, LSE, and Oxford research, the truth is nuanced. Sykes-Picot and the mandate system had profound lasting impact. Imposing European nation-state models on societies organized around religious communities created states with legitimacy deficits. Drawing borders that divided ethnic groups like Kurds and forced diverse populations into single states like Iraq built structural conflicts into the region. However, the Ottoman millet system had its own tensions. Sectarian conflicts existed before 1916. Any empire's collapse creates instability. The Sykes-Picot borders have proven remarkably resilient. Despite rhetoric about erasing colonial borders, no Arab state except the short-lived United Arab Republic has successfully merged. Even ISIS, which bulldozed the Iraq-Syria berm in 2014, proclaiming the end of Sykes-Picot, ultimately failed. The borders, however arbitrary their origin, have created distinct national identities. Iraqi identity now exists separate from Syrian, forged through a century under specific states. According to the Century Foundation, the challenge is not erasing borders, which would cause more violence, but transforming states from authoritarian structures into inclusive polities, accommodating ethnic and religious pluralism. One group paid the highest price: the Kurds, 30 to 40 million people spread across Turkey, 15 to 20 million, Iran, 8 to 10 million, Iraq, 6 to 8 million, and Syria, 2 to 3 million. Their statelessness is a direct consequence of decisions made between 1916 and 23. The Treaty of Sèvres in August 1920 promised Kurds a state. Articles 62 through 64 outlined autonomy and potential independence. But the treaty was never implemented. Mustafa Kemal Ataturk led a Turkish nationalist uprising, defeating Greek, French, and Armenian forces. By 1923, Ataturk had reversed Turkey's military situation. Exhausted Allied powers renegotiated. The Treaty of Lausanne in July 1923 replaced Sèvres. All mention of a Kurdish state was erased. Turkey's borders were redrawn to include vast Kurdish territories. Kurds were not represented. According to LSE analysis, the Lausanne betrayal fostered permanent distrust among Kurds toward international agreements. Meanwhile, Britain incorporated Kurdish Mosul into Iraq for oil, not Kurdish rights. The consequence was Kurds divided across 4 states. In each, they became suspect minorities subjected to forced assimilation. In Turkey, Kurdish language was banned. In Iraq, Saddam's Anfal campaign systematically destroyed thousands of Kurdish villages, used chemical weapons at Halabja, killing 5,000 in one day, and killed between 50,000 and 180,000 Kurds in genocide. In Syria, 300,000 Kurds were stripped of citizenship in 1962. The Kurdish saying, "No friends but the mountains," captures their century of abandonment.
The decisions made between 1916 and 23 continue shaping the Middle East profoundly. The Syrian civil war has displaced 13 million people, roughly half the pre-war population. Iraq's repeated wars have displaced millions more. According to United Nations data, the Middle East hosts the world's largest displaced population. Lebanon, a country of 6 million, absorbed 1.5 million Syrian refugees, increasing its population by 25%. This exacerbated sectarian tensions and contributed to economic collapse. In Europe, over 1 million refugees arrived in 2015, triggering political backlash and fueling right-wing nationalism. Syria's economy has contracted by over 60% since 2011. Infrastructure damage exceeds hundreds of billions of dollars. The World Bank estimates rebuilding Syria alone would cost between $250 and $400 billion. The region, once an integrated economic zone under Ottoman rule, is now fragmented by hard borders, wars, and sanctions. The Middle East produces 28 million barrels of oil daily, approximately 30% of global supply. Instability causes global price volatility. According to Stockholm International Peace Research Institute data, the 1928 Red Line Agreement created rentier states deriving revenue from oil rents rather than taxation. This insulated regimes from democratic accountability. Oil revenues funded security apparatuses to repress dissent. The cartelization of oil by Western companies established patterns of external dependency and internal repression that persist. The Christian population has collapsed. In the 1920s, Christians were approximately 20% of the Levant and Mesopotamia population. Today, according to US State Department reports, Christians constitute less than 5%. In Iraq, Christians were significant in 1920, now less than 1%. The sectarian political structures established by mandates made religious demographics a zero-sum game. In Lebanon, political power is allocated by sect. As demographics shift, power balances create permanent tension. In Iraq, the 2003 power inversion from Sunni minority rule to Shia majority rule unleashed suppressed sectarian grievances, resulting in horrific violence. Groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS emerged from instability and grievances rooted in the post-Sykes-Picot order. ISIS explicitly framed its 2014 offensive as erasing borders drawn by colonial powers. While ISIS was defeated, underlying conditions remain. Weak states, sectarian grievances, economic desperation, foreign intervention. Looking ahead, several scenarios are possible. Most likely is status quo persists. Borders remain despite instability. Iraqi identity is now distinct from Syrian, forged through separate histories. Regional powers, Turkey, Iran, Saudi Arabia, have interests in maintaining current borders. Kurdish independence in Iraq would inspire Kurdish nationalism in Turkey, Iran, Syria, which all vehemently oppose. A second scenario involves limited adjustments. Kurdish autonomy could evolve towards statehood, though facing overwhelming opposition. Federal systems granting regional autonomy might reduce tensions, but historical grievances run deep. Trust is minimal. Third scenario is continued fragmentation. Lebanon and Syria have partially collapsed. Non-state actors, Hezbollah, various militias control territory. If central governments cannot reassert authority, the region could devolve into militia-controlled fiefdoms, perpetuating instability.
The instability of the modern Middle East traces back to decisions made between 1916 and 1923. The Sykes-Picot Agreement and mandate system created three enduring problems. First, crisis of legitimacy. States born from betrayal of promises to Sharif Hussein compensated with hyper-nationalist or Islamist ideologies, often leading to radicalization. Second, the sectarian trap. French minority cultivation and British Sunni reliance politicized religious identities, making sectarianism structural. Third, stateless nations. Refusing Kurdish statehood created permanent insurgencies, weakening Iraq, Turkey, Syria, Iran. The borders drawn in 1916 have hardened. Iraqi identity is distinct from Syrian. Lebanese identity exists separately. These are realities forged through a century under specific states. The question is not whether to erase Sykes-Picot borders. ISIS tried in 2014 and failed catastrophically. The question is whether states within these borders can transform from authoritarian control into inclusive polities, serving all citizens regardless of ethnicity or sect. Until mechanisms of external dependency and internal repression, the true legacy of Sykes-Picot are reformed. The instability codified over a century ago will persist. History rarely offers simple solutions. The situation remains complex, with valid grievances on multiple sides. If you found this analysis valuable, subscribe for more balanced perspectives on global affairs.